Welcome back, guys, to another Frog Pod, your weekly video podcast series by Costa Rican Vacations. I'm your host, Adam Baker, and as you know by now, every week I chat to friends, colleagues, and industry experts when it comes to traveling here in Costa Rica. Today we have a pretty extensive topic, which is a big one, life in Costa Rica. And to discuss this with me is a couple of good friends of mine and travel consultants here at Costa Rican Vacations, Aaron Vanecek and Nica Guerra. Guys, nice to have you.
Nice to be here. I'm glad we can hopefully expand a little bit on this topic with you.
Thanks for having us.
I'm looking forward to it. I know it's going to be a good one. These are pretty open-ended questions, so we're going to delve down a few rabbit holes, I think. Nico, for those of our listeners who've never met you, never heard about you, tell us about Nico.
Yeah, my name is Nica Guerra. I was born in the United States, but I have dual citizenship. My mom's from Costa Rica. My dad's from Chile. I've been visiting Costa Rica since I was a little kid and moved here a couple of years ago. And I've kind of seen it grow and change from years and years ago to now, where I feel like I wanted to move here, and I love living here. You know, so it's been an awesome journey.
Nice. And how long have you been planning vacations?
I've been doing this for about 2 years now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Aaron, tell us the story.
Well, I'm originally from Minnesota, born in New York, but I came down to Costa Rica in 1991 for the first time, fell in love, and on and off, but not consecutively, for 18 years. So it's a great place.
Nice. Fell in love with the country or somebody special?
First in love with the country, then somebody special.
Okay, fantastic. Well, guys, let's jump into the big one. The question that kind of comes up a lot when I'm chatting to my expat friends, and even some of my local mates, they ask, how does living here, and in your case, compare to living in the US?
I would say it's an interesting comparison to make, because in my case, the big thing coming from Minnesota and cold winters where it's 20 degrees, 30 degrees below zero in January. January in Costa Rica, it's 80 degrees and sunny. So that comparison is really one to be had. There is a comparison to be made with regards to infrastructure, which Costa Rica is lacking relative to, say, the nice highways that we have in my home state. But overall, I really enjoy living here.
Is that one of the big things? Obviously, the weather. We're in the tropics, especially from Minnesota, right, coming down. The roads, that comes up a lot.
For sure.
But when you say infrastructure, what are some of the things that pop into your head immediately?
So one thing that really comes into mind is that here it takes a day to do one thing.
Yeah.
Whereas in the United States, if I had to run 5 errands, I could go to these different places. I could go to the bank. I could go to grocery shopping, do all these things, knock them all out in a few hours. Here, that's going to take you about a half a day to a day. And you really have to have patience with it.
It's funny you bring that up. One of my biggest pet peeves of being down here, and obviously we've all been here for years. I love it. But the banks in Costa Rica, it drives me mad. I go to England, right, and I'm just, I don't know, I'm paying some money in, or I'm just checking a balance, but I've got to go and ask somebody, one of the clerks. In the UK, even in a small town, 2 people in front of you, they've gone through in 10 minutes. Yeah. You go in, you get the ticket, you sit down, you might be there for half an hour or an hour. It took me 4 sessions to set up my internet banking. Yeah. I don't know, banking is one of those things that's just like...
And if you don't have the right paperwork, if you don't have your ID, you go right back to the queue. You go back to the ends. You have to make sure
everything's like a bit of a slower pace. You have any stories
like that?
Well,
I think obviously with regards to the banks in the UK or in the US, nobody goes into the bank anymore. Right.
That's true.
It's all
That's
online.
True.
And Costa Rica, in its defense, has taken steps so fewer people are going to the banks. And there's a difference between the state-run banks, which are the national banks, and private banks, which are a little bit more efficient. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to go to a bank on a payday, that's for sure, or the day that people have to pay all their child support.
I think that's a really valid point. When internet banking just became a thing, that's why it took me so long. And now you can just do about everything online, so it's not so not so bad.
Definitely.
I haven't seen the checkouts at the supermarkets yet, the self-service checkouts.
It's getting there. I saw it at a Walmart. It's not as popular, anywhere near as popular as it is in the States. You go to most every grocery store, you're going to be able to self-checkout, no problem at this point. But I've seen it at a handful of spots.
It's on its way. Yeah. Different areas. Because when you did... What? In EPA,
one of the hardware stores.
The hardware stores.
Yeah.
That's true. And then, like in Costa Rica, that's another difference. I don't know about the States. Maybe you guys can fill me in. When you leave the store and you've made a big purchase, you have to show your receipt at the door. Mm-hmm. Is that common in the US?
I think they have the checkers at Walmart and Target, but I don't think it's common that you actually have to show and prove that. And then I bought this stuff. I didn't steal it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So you could have the self-service checkouts in that hardware store. Yeah. Nica, what would you say are some of the pros and cons of a life in Costa Rica? The standard ones that you encounter.
I mean, there are a lot of pros. Within the past, couple of years, I've seen a lot of progress in terms of like wellness, getting out, getting the sun, being sunny year round. For me, that was one of the big things, is getting away from winter. I got to the point in my life where it's just like, I don't ever want to live in a winter again. I don't have to. I can come on down here, and I like the sunny year round. Like, that's, to me, is huge. There's a big the community of people that go out. Like, if you hit up the La Sabana National Stadium, that park Saturday morning, there's soccer games. There's people playing baseball. There's people running around the track. There's kids playing with their families. There's people with their dogs. So it's just a lot of people are outdoors still and like still interacting with each other. So I really like that aspect of it. Whereas compared to the United States, I feel like there's a ton of parks, and in certain cities that they are pretty packed, but there's a lot of parks that I could see like they're empty. Like, people barely use them. We just have parks. Like, not a lot of people leave their homes these days. Another good thing is the beaches, the weather. I mean, like, it's just you can literally go. You have a little bit of everything. You have the Caribbean side, clear water, beautiful, very laid back, incredible coastline. Then you got surfing. On the Pacific side, you have some of the best waves in the world. If you want more of like mountains and birding, you go to Monteverde, like Arenal. It's just like, there's just so many cool different things you can do here, and they're all relatively close, at 3 to 4 hours, 5 hour drives. And it's pretty awesome. The cons of that is that those drives are through the mountains, so they're a little bit scary sometimes. There's a lot of rolling, like you could get some clouds, and so you're going, everything's very slow. It's very, very much slow. And something, I don't know if I want to touch on this, is it's not like super, super serious, but another thing that you have to think about when you're living here is like first response time. If anything were to happen, it's in the United States, it's pretty quick. Here, you got to wait a little bit to do those type of things. So there's certain things that you have to take into account when you move here that, like it is a good thing to keep in mind. Yeah,
that's very valid point. And I think it's like that balance between having that slower pace of life, but all the pros that you get from it. It might take you 5 hours to get to the mountain, but when you're there, it's going to be gorgeous, and drive safely. So you don't need to call those first responders. Exactly. Would you say the same thing? And cons that you've faced, Aaron?
Well, I don't know. I was thinking about more of the pros as I took that sip of coffee that's sitting in front of me. One of the pros about living in Costa Rica is just the fact that you get a good cup of coffee wherever you go.
Good point.
This morning, I went with my boss over to Starbucks, and we overpaid for, we probably spent $15 on a couple of cups of coffee, but it would have been just as good if we'd gone to the little mom and pop shop next door and paid 75 cents. So I love that in Costa Rica, the big pro is that I love coffee, and I love that I can get a good cup of coffee anywhere. And when I go home, I never order coffee unless I go to a specialty place, because it's always so terrible.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's also similar to food. When you go into the small sodas, even like in Europe, you're in different places. You go off the main touristy trail, and you find, I don't know, the grandma who's been there for like 20, 30, 40 years. And the food.
The mom and pop places are still thriving in Costa Rica, whereas in the U.S., it's all chain. And the pro of the U.S. is that you go to one chain restaurant, you're going to get the same thing everywhere. But here you actually can go in, and it's a different cook, a little different flavor on the same recipe. And the mom and pop places here are just, it's really one of the things I really enjoy coming here.
Yeah, and it's fresh. It's fresh. That's the thing. Is a change in food here. I mean, it's insane. Like it's grown naturally. You go to the open market. It's like, out there, it's kind of like a niche thing to do. To be like, oh, I went to the fresh market, and it's like you're getting some little organic farmers and all this stuff. Like here, I feel like that's the standard.
Yeah.
And the odd thing is like the whole GMO, all the other stuff like that, the chain and all that, like that's like the odder thing out here to find.
That's a really good point, actually. Just as I'm thinking as you say it, it's one of those things after years you kind of take for granted. Like when I'm in the supermarket, Automercado is one that's close to buy, and you go into the frozen section, where, and this, I think it might be the same in the US. In the UK, you've got a huge frozen section. You've got your fries, you've got your frozen pizzas, your frozen burgers. There's maybe half an aisle that's the frozen section. The taxes are even higher, so it costs a lot more. It does. And back to your point, Nica, when you were talking about families and people being outside, I love going to the Savannah Park, the main park in Savannah, in San Jose, on the weekend, playing tennis, playing football, soccer. Everybody's out and about in the sunny weather. And that's the same for what you were just saying, the fresh markets, the farmers markets on the weekends. That's a great place to go and see everybody. Get your food fresh. You could pay maybe $20 and you've got 4 or 5 carry bags. Tell me about like the farmers market.
Oh man, so I live in Perez Celedon. I live up in the mountains, this little, cool little town. And that I spend about maybe 10, 12 mil, which is equivalent to about, 15, 12. Yeah. And I'm good for the week. I have a couple stalks of broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, lentils, beans, like kombucha. Like it's awesome. You can get so much for so little, and you can haggle with them too if you want to.
Yeah.
Not that I really ever want to. It's like, okay, that's
because you're haggling and you're talking about 30 cents.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there's a cucumber that's 10, 12 cents. It's like, okay.
Throw me in a free coconut, please.
Yeah. Aaron, is there any food that you absolutely love here? Or what do you miss in terms of gastronomy?
One of the cons is when I go to the grocery store where I live, because like Nico, I live in a small city about an hour and a half outside of the capital. And when I go to the grocery store there, it's just the basics.
Yeah.
And if I have any cravings for, say my favorite brand of frozen pizza in the States, I'm not getting that. Say I have a craving for like my good old Cheetos. The Cheetos here are terrible, even though it's the same brand, but they're made in Guatemala and they're not as good. So it's just, little things like that is one of the cons. You can get a lot of the creature comforts more in the capital than outside, but there it's all fresh, it's all good. But if I want some good old fashioned American food, it's a little bit tougher.
Yeah, and you get what's it like? Because when I first came here in 2006, I did see quite a few American chains. Upon I should say. Upon getting off the airport and getting into San Jose, there was a lot of McDonald's, a lot of Burger Kings, a lot of KFCs. You see a lot of the change right from the States, but some of the bigger ones, not all of them. But that doesn't quite.
Well, some of them didn't make it. And I remember Wendy's used to be here.
Wendy's used to be here. Yeah. They shut down. I think didn't Popeyes have a chain here? And
Popeyes still does.
They still do.
Popeyes.
The names are great.
The names.
Yeah. When you say what you've known one way.
One chain that I've seen that has been very successful in growing, of course, is Hooters. Hooters.
And why is that doing so well?
Why do you think?
I drink my coffee.
That's right. Swiftly on to the next question.
Food, honey.
The wings are amazing.
The wings. Thank you, Pablo.
I do like that. I tell my wife I would go to Hooters for the wings if they were men serving them, but
she doesn't believe
it doesn't hurt that they aren't men, and she never does believe me.
That's right. But I see a lot of Costa Ricans in there. There's a lot of ticos. The wings are good. So I hear.
It ain't cheap either, but it's always bad.
It ain't cheap. Well, that's another thing. What you might be paying for McDonald's, Burger King, or these chains, maybe a tad more than back in the States.
But the service is better. The quality is better. If you go to those chains, they've been so watered down and people just don't care about their jobs for the most part in the United States, that it's just like, it's a hit or miss. Here, most of the fast foods, I've been like I normally don't eat Taco Bell in the United States, and I really don't. I feel bad eating it here.
Yeah.
So I feel bad
eating it. Yeah.
My wife loves Taco Bell.
Yeah. There you go.
But like the few times I've been here, I'm like, oh wow, this is actually like good. Like this is better quality, and this is not too bad. But that actually reminds me of something else that I found has been tedious, and one of the possibly cons of Costa Rica. Since I've gotten a car and since I've been driving all around the country, I can't just hit up any fast drive-thrus. Drive-thrus, you can find them here in the city. You can find one in Perez.
Okay, one.
One. But you did not find McDonald's.
Luck Express.
Yeah, exactly. And but if you're going on the highways, the coastal route, anything, it's pure sodas. Like you have to stop, you have to sit down and get a meal, and that doesn't take a ton of time, but that adds up. The States, if I'm driving from, let's say for instance, Raleigh, North Carolina to Atlanta, I'm not gonna stop. The only thing I'm stopping for is gas. Everything else is on the road. I go through a drive-through, I eat while I'm going, and that saves me about 30 to an hour. So that's another thing that I've noticed here. Is there's not a ton of drive-throughs.
Yeah, that's a good point. We call them service centres on the motorways in the UK, the highways. And actually, that's a really good point. I was back in the UK last Christmas. We stopped in a small town and went to a Burger King. It was really run down. Yeah. And it was a consistent thing that these Costa Rica, I guess because of the infrastructure growing as a nation that's getting more and more popular outside and inside, and the economy's doing well, that you see these new McDonald's opening up, and the buildings are super modern, and the service is quick, and it's clean, and it's good.
Well, there's that, and it's also, as a percentage of the average Costa Rican's income, fast food is not cheap here for a local. And it's more expensive than going to the mom and pop shop.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, I mean, how much does a combo meal around the corner at the end? It's like $4,500. It's like $8.
$10. Yeah.
$8 for a Happy Meal or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you guys, what are some of the biggest differences between urban and rural Costa Rica? So, I mean, both of you guys live out the way slightly. You're in Perez. Which city are you from?
Turrialba.
So you're in Turrialba. So arguably that's even more, under one of the most active volcanoes. So what's day-to-day life for you, Aaron, when it comes to...
Well, the most important for me is that I don't have to waste any time in traffic. Because urban Costa Ricans, and I've experienced it driving into the office today, is that, you have, once you hit the outside, kind of the shell of the urban area, you're stuck in traffic until you get to the office. So that was an extra hour onto my drive time just from being inside the city.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big things. And it's a little bit more, it's more congested. The people are not, I can say outright, the people are not as happy in the urban areas as they are in the rural communities. Just because it's easier to do things. You can go and go back and forth and things like that.
More relaxed.
Yeah.
Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. People are a little bit more mellow out there.
And the cost of living in the urban areas is a lot higher than living outside.
Yeah. You could argue it's similar to most urbanized cities, Europe and in North America.
Oh, yeah.
When you're out in the countryside, it's a bit more relaxed. Obviously, the famous term, which we're going to discuss in more detail here, pura vida, pure life.
Pura vida, todo bien.
Todo bien. That kind of Costa Rica essence, happiness, is noticed, I guess, more in the rural countryside. People see more pura vida.
Absolutely, because that was my initial introduction to Costa Rica. Perez Celedon. That's where all my family's from, and they're out in rural, the sticks.
Yeah.
But that, you see the stars up there. It's incredibly gorgeous, and everybody just sits on their porches and talks. And you spend time with your family, and have real experiences. And I always saw that in comparison to what we did in the United States, where you eat, watch TV, blah blah blah. Everybody's on the go, and it's like an entirely different experience. So here, it is something real, but I do see it more in the countryside than here. And another big difference is you have to get everything done by 5 p.m. because everything closes at 5 p.m. Sundays, nothing open. Yeah, nothing is open. Bed is completely shuts down. And so it's like Sundays. You get lucky if you want to eat late. There's one burger spot, which is a really good burger spot, so I'm not mad at it. Because it's delicious. It's delicious. It's one of my favorite burger spots there. But you can't. Here in the city, you can find this. There's always something going on 24/7 here in San Jose.
Yeah.
But in Bettis, it's you got to plan for certain things for sure.
Myself, I love going to the cinema. Big movie fan. I love playing tennis, going to soccer fields. Are there any amenities that you guys miss that you get, Aaron?
Well, you mean compared to the rural as opposed to the city in Costa Rica?
Or does it not necessarily?
Well, for me, I'm actually closer to an urban area than Nico. I can come into San Jose and have all the amenities, the movies, the malls, the shopping, and get back home by evening. My daughter had a doctor's appointment this week, and we left around 6 a.m, and I was back at my home office by 11.
Oh, nice.
That same morning. I had to go to the doctor. So it's only an hour and a half. With traffic, sometimes 2 hours to get to the...
So it's like an extended suburb, if you will, even though it's
an extended suburb driving through these gorgeous mountains and
not a bad
coffee fields next to sugar cane plantations. So it's really a scenic drive. Have you been?
Once, a long time ago. Oh, no, I loved it. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's always green. Yeah. There's no dry season there.
Yeah,
it's always green.
For me, it's a little bit different.
I mean, so you've got your burger joint. Well, what else are you missing, Nico?
So, all right. Well, the reason why I laughed earlier, because when you mentioned cinema, the movie theater, we have this little thing called, our mall in Perez Celedón, and it's called...
As he does the quote marks with his fingers, for those of you on the podcast.
An open shopping center, you know?
Right.
But they have a theater. They have two theater. They have two salas, two rooms, two screens. Yeah. And I went there to watch Black Panther when it first came out, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm gonna watch Black Panther. It's like maybe like $2 million for a ticket, $4.
That's awesome, right?
Yeah.
In the UK.
You can get popcorn, all stuff is relatively inexpensive. And I walk in there. And it's literally like a classroom setting. There's chairs. It's not like theater chairs. It's actual
chairs, like school chairs.
Like school chairs. Like something kind of like very basic chairs.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah.
And there's the projector screen. It's like it's just like one of the projectors you could buy at a
I'm envisioning like a presentation. They're bringing down the board
on a white wall.
I'm envisioning the Chinese subtitles at the bottom.
So
that's right.
Close.
They actually received the film. Yeah.
I can't remember if it was. I think it was it had subtitles. I don't remember if they were Spanish and English. I think it was in Spanish. I was really mad because it was in Spanish. I wanted to see it in English with Spanish subtitles. But the audio track was off. So for like the first 10 minutes of the film, there's like nothing like. Or like, what's going on with the storyline? Like, you can't hear anything. They're like, oh, whoops, sorry. So they restart the movie from the beginning. And I'm just like, this is the last time I ever come to this theater. So I drive, for instance, last night I got into town. I watched the new Joker at Cinepolis Lindora. You got the recliner seats. You got table service, everything that's kind of popular now in the States. But I no matter what, I drive here to watch movies. Like and if there's a movie I really, really want to see, I'll make the journey or I'll find a reason to come down here and then I'll watch it, but that is one of the big things. That's pretty funny.
It's funny you mentioned that. When I used to live in the sticks, 4 hours in Monteverde, there is no cinemas. There was one guy doing a similar thing, bringing down the projector and whatnot. I came down to San Jose, watched 3 films back to back in one night because I needed my hit at the cinema. But it's worth pointing out you get a lot of films projected in subtitles or in their original language, especially in San Jose. But that's pretty big. Is there anything you guys would like to have here from the States, in Costa Rica? Is there anything you miss? I wish Costa Rica had this.
My family and friends. That's the big kid.
Sure. It's true.
I would love to have my brother and sister, my nieces and nephews, and my parents, my grandfather, my high school and college friends closer.
Yeah,
because it becomes more of an endeavor to international airfare and passports and just a longer thing. It's not like in the States you can get Southwest or JetBlue and get a $100 ticket to go back and forth and see people, or just hop on the awesome highways and go back and forth and see everybody.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I wish I had down here.
Yeah. That's kind of I can relate to that, being from the UK, even a bit further afield. Right. Even if you guys can get there at least maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Obviously, for us, it's
obviously the way technology is, it's easier to stay in touch, but it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same as
and you guys have the
sharing
trains,
the coffee
right?
together.
You guys have an awesome train system as well.
For me growing up, the transportation in the country, like you were saying, just driving or getting on the train. And you're town to town super quick. So getting around, and like you're saying, the Spirit for us, it's Ryanair and EasyJet. Even in Europe, you can go in between countries in a couple of hours. Anything that you miss, Nico?
Same. I mean, when people ask what you miss the most, it's always friends and family, because that's like that does take its toll. I mean, it's awesome. You meet new friends and people out here and a lot of similar mindsets, but and from every walk of life. But there's just something that part of home that I definitely miss. That and probably like highways, the highway infrastructure. Like I wish if highways, like if our we had 4-lane highways or something like that, it would eliminate half the travel time to a lot of these destinations. But obviously that's asking a lot. But that's probably one of the things that I do really enjoy is you can drive across country, north, south in the United States, anywhere from like 8 hours to 12 hours. I can go from North Carolina to New York 8 hours, or North Carolina to Florida 8 hours. And that's such a different demographic, like it just changes so much. You see so much, and it's nice just being able to hit cruise control 80 miles and just go
bang.
Yeah, not have to worry about any crazy motorcycles living past you or anything like that. Like just kind of.
We spoke about getting around in Costa Rica on a previous episode, and it comes up a lot. The roads. And the speed limit is reduced because the roads are very small as well.
Who follows a speed limit?
Well, this is a good point. It's like you're not encouraged to go fast. People do go fast.
Yeah. I see way too much roadkill here. We got to think of the animals. Drive the speed limit.
Sometimes I imagine that the Costa Rica's central infrastructure and economy grew so quickly, especially in San Jose, that some of these roads were designed for horse and cart. 50, 60 years ago.
Ox carts.
Yeah. Ox carts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and now everybody has 1.5 cars each.
Right,
exactly. It gets pretty busy.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love to ask you guys finally before moving on, in terms of lifestyle, what can the US learn from Costa Rica, in your opinions?
Well, I think just enjoying what's around you a little bit more. I mean, we're blessed by this immense natural beauty. And when all of my clients come down and they're like, wow, these mountains, these valleys, the oceans, the beaches. But sometimes they're coming from, say, Colorado. And I was like, well, you got the Rocky Mountain National Park next door.
Right.
Go to that. And sometimes you take for granted what you have around you. So I think if you can just step back, and because Costa Rica's nature is always so much in your face and you're always surrounded by it, I think it reminds people of how much we can enjoy it. And that's something I think
that's
people
in the US
That's
true. Yeah,
I agree with that. I think what I really like about here is that it doesn't matter what class, like how much money you have, what class you are. You can hop on the bus, you can carpool people, but you're gonna see people out at the beach. You know, like and you're gonna take out a cooler. You're gonna have even if it's just like a weekend trip, like let's do this. Like one of the things that I think it's really easy to do in the United States is just sit in your home, Netflix, watch whatever's latest, or just like not really get out and enjoy it, because there is beauty all around in the United States. The United States is one of the most beautiful countries. We have so many national parks that are just absolutely gorgeous. And you talk to some people, they're born and raised in their town. They never leave it. They never go out and enjoy those things or just go on these little adventures, and I really enjoy that about people here. They're always up for some sort of adventure, whether it's going to Mountains Beach, anything, just to kind of go out and enjoy the beauty here.
Yeah. I can imagine people saying it's easy to say when it's such a small country, and you've got the 50 states.
And also because
a large country.
It's a country that's so dependent on tourism right now as part of its economy. Costa Ricans are so used to receiving many different types of people from everywhere around the world. So they're pretty accepting of differences in the way other people's are, depending upon their religion or their race. And, I think that's something others could learn, not only in the US, but all the way around.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I go back to the UK, and every Christmas, every time I go back in the winter, people always seem still a bit more stressed. Obviously, there's a political climate, it's uncertain. Right. But there's always something, the idea of Pura Vida and the pace, even though it can be sometimes frustrating for the foreign expats that come and live here and enjoy it massively. But you can also learn from it, having a bit more patience and that time to engage with people. Yeah, I think it's a really nice point. Is there anything you guys get asked about living down here? So, Aaron, do you have family members who go, Aaron, what is it that keeps you down there?
Well,
That's a common question.
It's, what keeps me down here is, I enjoy the country so much. But the thing I get asked the most of is, and it's always surprising to them, is it must be so cheap. Living in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
You must save so much money living in Costa Rica.
Hashtag
and
smiles.
I say, well, really, it's not that much cheaper than living in, say, Minnesota. If I were living in rural Minnesota versus rural Costa Rica, my cost of living might be cheaper in rural Minnesota than in rural Costa Rica.
That is a big point. Yeah. Grocery shopping. Some things are cheaper. Public transport's great.
Right.
But a gallon of milk is $4.
Yeah.
And I think it's cheaper in Minnesota.
Yeah, your electricity bill, water's pretty cheap, but internet, cable,
shampoos, razors, any of those type of things are just like
and don't even get started on clothes or cars.
Brand names, cars is a whole other topic. Getting a car, televisions, electrodomestic products. Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Fruits and vegetables, dirt cheap. If you have the wherewithal to pay for like a daily maid service, that's cheap.
Yeah.
Everything else, a little bit more.
Services like that are definitely less expensive. There's certain things that you can enjoy here that you wouldn't really get to enjoy.
I have a lot of people that's like, I want to go retire there. My Social Security will be enough. Maybe not.
Depends
on how you want to live. If you want to live
in the mountains,
if you want to live like a Costa Rican in the mountains,
if you're willing to see films, you know, on an old school chair from the 70s with a projector in Chinese at different times, you're going to set. Guys, we have a couple of questions from our social platforms here. Nico, I'm going to throw this first one out to you. This one comes from Tamara Walton on YouTube. I'd love some help on planning my destination wedding. Any suggestions?
Destination weddings. That one's always. It's definitely doable, but it's always kind of like a little bit something that I try to steer clear of, just because it can be difficult.
Nico doesn't want the bridezillas.
Yeah.
No, sure. Okay,
honeymoons. I'm all for honeymoons. I love honeymoons.
Well, how about Costa Rica as a destination for a wedding?
Where would you send Tamara?
So I mean, if it was a budget. You know, kind of trying a little bit lower budget, something like that. Like I saw a really cool wedding at Costa Verde in Manuel Antonio. They did the ceremony. It ended up raining, but the ceremony was going to be at the adults only pool overlooking the Pacific Ocean. You know, like very intimate ceremony. They rent out rooms there. It's not that expensive, so you're not going to if people are coming out, they're not going to get hit over the head with a really expensive room. Didi, I've also saw a really beautiful wedding.
Tamarindo
Didi. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen some absolutely gorgeous weddings at less expensive hotels, so you can get a little bit more of a budget there. If you want to break the bank and go all out, then yeah, you can do that here. But for the most part, like it's going to cost a pretty penny. So I think it's a cool idea. Depending on where everybody's from, where everybody's living, you know, because flights are a whole other thing.
Yeah, organization,
transportation. Yeah, transportation from San Jose, Liberia, you know, like that's a huge thing. So it's definitely a possibility. I've seen it done. But me personally, I mean, I just kind of like go the other way.
I think one of the main things when you're thinking about a destination wedding is contact that local specialist.
Yeah.
It's a different country. Let them set the right expectations for what's involved, because it's a lot different than doing it in, you know, a destination wedding in the United States of, say, Charleston, South Carolina, or Savannah, Georgia. That's easy. But here it's complicated. All of your guests are going to have a million questions.
Yeah.
You want somebody else to answer.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
We could definitely help with that, but in terms of beauty, Costa Rica's beaches, there's a ton of places and lots of hotels have that.
I mean, when I recommend that my clients that come down for the weddings or even better for their honeymoon, you know, the pictures at the waterfalls. And there's always.
It's absolutely. Yeah, if I were to ever get married, I think I would definitely do it out here and invite people out for sure. Yeah.
Cool. And Aaron, Tammy Finder Listopad, I hope I said your name right, Tammy, on Facebook asks, hey, is it too late to plan a vacation for 9 people now for December?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a bit late, right?
I actually 2 weeks ago planned a vacation for a 4-family group of 16.
Okay, so she's got a bit of time, 1 or 2 months before Christmas.
Still time to do holiday planning.
Okay.
Now is the time when a lot of people that reserved back in January and February decided, well, you know, my kids have conflicts over the holidays. They made the basketball tournament, whatever. They're canceling. So there's some space opening up. So there's a lot of good space there.
Month, yeah.
I mean, people do need to have the realistic expectations about budget. The holidays are more expensive time to her.
Yeah.
But she's definitely not too late. If she contacted us, we could definitely do a good trip.
October, November, we can create some space, but you've got to be flexible with your days.
Flexible dates and with locations.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the typical, you know, we have a pretty common of going from Arnell to a beach location. That's a pretty standard package for us, right? And it's a good mix. You end at the beach, all that stuff. With Christmas, depending on availability, we might have to start at the beach and then end at Arnold. So it's like, as long as you're open and flexible, we can work with you, no doubt. But it's going to be a little bit different than if it were July.
Yeah.
Than if it were another month where everything's pretty much open, you know.
Makes a lot of sense. So top tip, Tammy, if you can, plan ahead to get exactly what you want. But if you're flexible with dates and location and budget,
it's still,
a couple of months out, there's still time. Well, guys, that's awesome. So to finish up, we're going to do our 50-50 segment. So I'm going to throw a couple of ideas or different themes at you based on what we've been chatting about, and I want to hear your first answer. See where you guys mix and match, okay? So first one, live in rural or urban Costa Rica?
Rural.
Rural for me too.
That would make sense, right, for both of you. Gallo Pinto breakfast or American pancakes with bacon?
Oh, Pinto.
Pinto, but if you can throw some bacon on the side.
Okay, so Aaron's mixing it up. Brilliant. Football or soccer?
Football.
Football all the way.
I've got to say football.
Wait, football. Like I thought you were saying like
NFL football.
Oh no,
soccer.
soccer. I thought you were saying, would you say football or soccer?
Well, football.
Football.
Exactly. I've got a note here for myself.
It's October. It's football
for
season.
me.
Soccer.
So we've got NFL one side. We've got football,
yeah.
soccer.
I'm wearing my Vikings purple today.
Yeah, I can see that. There you go. And what about in the next FIFA Soccer World Cup, USA or Costa Rica?
I always have an answer that is I started watching soccer or football as they call it here in Costa Rica, and all my Costa Rican friends really got me into soccer. So I started watching both national teams. So because I really got into it in Costa Rica, I say the Costa Rican national team is the team of my heart.
Yeah.
But they're really disorganized, and it's always a disaster. They're always changing coaches. So I say the U.S. team is the team for my brain because I think they're more likely to eventually win it someday than Costa Rica.
I mean, I think it's a farce that either one of them will ever win.
I think that's fair.
I love either one will actually win it.
Never can tell.
From an English point of view, I believe, you're both very, very far out there with those ideas.
But I grew up with the U.S. team. You know, I grew up in the States, and I always was more for U.S. And then, because Costa Rica never made it. You know, like when they started getting in 2014, when they made it, that was like... And on top of that, Gaylor Navas is from Perez, so like I'm
their goalkeeper,
the best goalie in the world,
one of the best goalies in the world. And so like after that, I'm all for.
Totally change your allegiance. I love it. Finally, U.S. winter or Costa Rica rainy season?
Costa Rica rainy season.
Rainy season for Nico.
I would say it depends on the month, only because for Christmas I need snow. I grew up with the storybook in the movies, snow at Christmas. But come January 3rd or 4th or 5th, I'll take rain above the snow anytime.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I miss the cold weather, but the rain in the UK is really boring, miserable, and endless. Here it's impressive, but it's not as cold.
If there's mountains, if I can snowboard, that's the only time I'm willing to live in the winter. Like if I can go up to the mountains and snowboard, then by all means. But like North Carolina, for instance, would just get cold, like really cold, and it's just unbearable. And it's like this, it sucks. There's nothing to do here.
Well, guys, before I leave you, Aaron, and for those of you who don't know, obviously you've been in the tropics in this part of the world for a while, I suggest you guys check out Mr.Gringo on YouTube. And you can see Aaron and his other job as a televisual star in Honduras. I won't say any more, but check out that because that's a treat. But Mr.Gringo, is there anything you wish you knew about Costa Rica before you came down here?
Before coming down, it was so long ago. It was 28 years ago. But I guess the thing I really wish I'd known before I came down was, how amazing the people are here. If I'd known how nice it was and how accommodating they were, I probably would have tried to come down earlier.
Nice, fantastic. And Nico, what is it that's kept you here? Obviously, you have the choice with dual citizenship.
Right. I mean, it's just been a phenomenal pair of years in terms of like personal growth and what I've seen and done. Like I love cliff jumping. I love the high adventure stuff. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie, and the hiking out here, everything. It's just like even when I lived in San Jose, I was like, if you want to go hike up to like the top of the mountain and check out this awesome view, that is so cool. Like, and then on top of that, the people I've met out here, it's been an entirely different set of minds and open-mindedness that you just don't get to see in the United States. You know, like knowing multiple languages, being bilingual, like that's huge. And that's something that I didn't particularly get made fun of, but like it was something that was kind of like that's weird, they'd be like, oh, you're from Costa Rica, like what part of Mexico is that? And it's like, like the ignorance, there's a lot of ignorance that comes from growing up in the United States, because the United States is everything, like you don't really have to leave unless you want to. So that has been a huge change of pace, where now I feel like I'm behind because people know more languages, people have been to more countries than I have, and it's like, dang, like this is really cool. And I love being able to pick people's brain when I meet English travelers, when I meet Canadians. Like I love going to a local hotel or like to a bar or something like that. starting a conversation with anybody and just learning so much about their country, about these little things, the foods, the differences, and the nuances. Like that to me is absolutely worth it to stay here and just continually, get stimulated and enjoy it.
Very cool. Really expanding.
You also forgot working for an amazing company,
Oh,
having a spectacular manager.
And here we are.
Yeah,
exactly.
Is awesome.
That is true. I'm super thankful because around the time that I got the job, was around the time I moved here, everything fell into place. I've been able to travel the country, go to all these phenomenal hotels that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to go to maybe once a year.
We're lucky. We have a fantastic job.
We do have, there's a lot of perks to this shop. So I am very, very thankful for that and grateful because that's, to me, it's opened up an entirely different viewpoint as well. Yeah.
Well, guys, I am very thankful for having both of you coming in. Appreciate it. I think we've killed a lot of the topic on the life in Costa Rica. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
It's a great life and pura vida.
Pura vida.
That was life in Costa Rica. Very informative. I hope you found it interesting. Aaron and Nica were great guests, but I'm sure you guys have questions for us too. If you're watching on YouTube, please do let us know in the comments box below. And if you're listening via the podcast, please reach out to us on Facebook at Costa Rican Vacations. As always, please don't forget to subscribe to stay in touch with your weekly episode of the Frog Pod. Until next time, hasta la próxima.